Crime Inspector Hall and Sergeant Vieira to come up and take some questions. In August 2020, the Winnipeg Police Services Guns and Gangs Unit and Organized Crime Unit entered into an investigation that began with a social media post involving a firearm. The Guns and Gangs Unit subsequently continued this investigation, which progressed into both a firearm and drug investigation. On August 19th, the Guns and Gangs Unit, with the assistance of Organized Crime, Firearms Investigation and Enforcement Unit, as well as the Tactical Support Team, executed 3 warrants throughout the city. One at a residence in the 100 block of Dalhousie Boulevard, a residence in the 200 block of Provencher, and at a hotel in the 1800 block of Pembina Highway. 4 adults were arrested and over 100 charges were laid as a result of this investigation. Jonathan Alexander Hernchier was charged with 46 drug, firearm, and assault-related offences. Joseph Liu was charged with 35 drug and firearm-related offences. Laura Jean Powell was charged with 16 drug and firearm-related offences. Sherry Ann Kelly Lajamodier was charged with 12 drug and firearm-related offences. All of these individuals are from Winnipeg, and they were all detained in custody. Over $1.5 million worth of illicit drugs was seized, as well as $150,000 in cash, firearms, and ammunition. Below is a list of the items I will read to you, and we will see as on display here. 17.8 kilograms of methamphetamine, 2.7 kilograms of cocaine, 8.5 kilograms of Xanax pills, 1.5 kilograms of psilocybin, 500 grams of fentanyl, several Percocet pills and gabapentin pills, $150,000 worth of Canadian currency, as well a money counter, a vacuum sealer, and other packaging materials. Looking at the firearms that were seized, there's a 12-gauge shotgun, a 40 caliber Sig Sauer, a 22 caliber Ruger rifle, another 22 caliber GSG rifle, a 9mm Ruger rifle, a model PC carbine. There's an inoperable revolver, a 22 Derringer model Frontier. In addition, the following air pistols were seized: 2 Glock 19s, a Glock 17, a Walther PPK, a Crossman 357 SNR. There was various ammunition seized, all compatible with these firearms. And lastly, 2 smoke grenades. So I'm now going to turn questions over to the Commander of Organized Crime, Inspector Elton Hall, followed up by Sergeant Mark Vieira, who will show us the display.
I'll do a quick statement first, actually. Good morning. I'd like to acknowledge the efforts of the Guns and Gangs Unit during this investigation. This is simply excellent, proactive frontline policing by these officers. In keeping within their mandate, this investigation was also limited in duration, not exceeding 48 hours in length. As well, I would like to thank the officers of the Organized Crime Unit, Firearms Investigations Unit, and a Firearms Analysis Unit for their prompt assistance in this matter. I'd like to point out the significant seizure of 18 kilograms of methamphetamine in front of me today. This is a highly addictive and dangerous drug which has plunged individuals and the healthcare system into crisis. A recent 2020 study conducted by the University of Manitoba indicates there is a 7-fold increase in emergency room visits because of methamphetamine. Methamphetamine has caused a health crisis in Winnipeg and across Canada. I ask anybody with information regarding the trafficking of methamphetamine to call 986-6222 or contact Crime Stoppers. Finally, anybody who has family members or loved ones requiring assistance can call the Manitoba Addictions Hotline or visit the Manitoba Addictions website for further information. Thank you. I can take questions at this time.
So, when did this investigation begin in Montreal?
I believe it's August the 18th.
I see that it was prompted by a social media post. I'm sure there's not that much you can tell us about that, but was this an individual brandishing a weapon or a group of individuals?
I'll refrain from really commenting too much on the investigation. This is before the courts right now. The individual does have a right to a fair trial, and I don't want to muddy the waters for the Crown Attorney, but what I can say is this was initiated via social media.
Do police believe this is gang-related at all?
Like I just mentioned, I won't comment if this individual is involved in a gang or not involved in a gang. I can tell you that just about everybody in Canada and everybody in Winnipeg do not have access to this type of weaponry or the amount of drugs you see on the table today. This is generally reserved for people in a drug trade or who are in gangs or organized crime groups or drug networks.
It's a significant degree of, or number of firearms. Do police believe these are being trafficked or these owned or individual uses?
Yeah, so I mentioned the firearms analysis unit will continue with this investigation. What they're going to do is they're going to continue investigating the firearms part of it along with our firearms investigation unit. So both units will start looking into the history of the firearms to see where they're from, if they've been trafficked, if they're stolen, if they're from the United States. The investigation does continue after this.
These four individuals, were they arrested on the 19th of August?
Correct.
It's now the 15th of September. I'm just wondering why is this information just coming out now?
It's a court process, first and foremost. We contact the federal Crown Attorneys, and it's when they're ready, and they have the final disclosure that we can come out here and talk to the media about it.
Sure. Where do you buy smoke? Where do you buy smoke grenades?
Very good question. I'm not sure.
So at this point, you're not able to say whether these drugs are being trafficked, but this quantity?
Oh, these don't mistake what I'm saying. These drugs are being trafficked. This sole individual, one of the individuals involved here, brought these drugs into the city and is solely responsible for the drugs you see on the table and the weapons you see on the table.
This is a significant number of weapons off the street. I mean, what does that mean for the police service and the public?
Well, what I can tell you as a commander here, I really asked the Guns and Gangs unit, although they focus on firearms offenses, I really asked them to step up in this area. I don't want to, what we're trying to avoid seeing is what's going on in Vancouver and Toronto right now, and that's, I say that respectfully to the police services, but you're seeing a lot of daylight shootings and random shootings in the streets. We don't want that here. So we're trying to be proactive. I think firearms are probably one of the biggest challenges for urban policing in Canada right now. I think most Canadian agencies are beginning to struggle with the amount of firearms on the street, obviously with our proximity to the United States, ghost guns, trafficking, etc. It's becoming a real challenge, so this is significant for us. I wanted people in Winnipeg to see that we are taking these guns off the street and we're taking it seriously.
You talked earlier, sir, about the amount of meth that was seized. How much meth is out there right now?
Well, on the table right now, there's just under 18 kilos, which is pretty significant. But I would suggest this is probably the tip of the iceberg. Depending on a drug network or a criminal organization, every 10 to 14 days, generally, drug traffickers will come in and, for lack of better words, reload. So this is a significant seizure for the police and for people in Winnipeg. This is a large amount of methamphetamine. There are other drug networks out there that are trafficking in Winnipeg as well, but for this particular individual or group, this is significant. It's a significant seizure for Winnipeg, and it assists in the health crisis. It helps people, loved ones and families who are suffering this health crisis right now.
Any more questions? again, I mean, you did touch on this in my last question, but what's the message here today by showing the seizure?
Well, what's the message? Quite simply, we just want people to understand in Winnipeg that the Guns and Gangs unit is actively investigating these incidents, the drug trafficking and the firearms offenses that are going on. We do this on a daily basis. There's been significant seizures over the last 6 or 8 months since I've been the inspector here, but today we just wanted to show what we're actually dealing with on the street. I want to point out that this is one individual responsible for what you're seeing on the table right now. It's because of this one individual that you see the violence on the street between street gangs and these young people shooting each other and the drug trafficking going on. It also affects the front lines. It's a stress on frontline emergency services, not just police, but the paramedics who never get recognition for what they're doing. They are running around and working very hard in this health crisis right now. And I should probably acknowledge the nurses at the hospitals who deal with this emergency rooms every day. It's bad enough and hard enough that they're dealing with the COVID issues. They're now dealing with a methamphetamine issue as well. So as you can see, there's probably $1.5 million in drugs sitting on this table right now. That's a street value. That's $1.5 million that organized crime or drug traffickers or drug networks do not have today to purchase guns, purchase more drugs, or facilitate whatever they're involved in a criminal activity. As well, there's $150,000 in cash here, so I think it's safe to say that this is probably proceeds of crime. What I mean by that is this is probably funds that came from selling drugs that we don't have on the table today. So $150,000, that could be between 10 or 15 kilos of methamphetamine that's on the street. So it's significant. We want people in Winnipeg to understand what we're doing. We understand the stresses on the front lines and on the taxpayers, and we just want to make sure people understand we are doing this, and we're working really hard to keep the methamphetamine off the streets right now.
This is a pretty significant seizure, but there's been a number of fairly large seizures this year. I mean, how does this compare to some of the other seizures the unit has made this year? So
I pointed out the Guns and Gangs unit. This is a frontline unit we have that deals with these street issues. I point this out because this is a very big seizure for that unit. This isn't a unit that spends a lot of time and resources and effort investigating drug groups. You could spend a year investigating a drug group and maybe get a little more than what you see on the table right now. This is a 48-hour investigation. It's a really good police work by a group of young officers. So I really wanted to point it out and acknowledge it. But for that particular shift and for that particular unit, this is significant.
If I could circle back briefly just to the initial trigger for this investigation, the social media post, was that brought to the police attention by someone, a civilian who saw that, or was that investigation already kind of monitoring social media by the police?
Yeah, I'm going to just refrain. It's a very good question, a fair question. Refrain from answering. I think that's something that has to go before the courts, and that's something the Crown Attorney will have to present, and it'll be up to a judge to decide how they proceed with it.
It's safe to say there are those officers who are able to do that social media analysis and investigate in that avenue? Yes,
for sure. I mean, look, I talked to you a couple weeks ago. I'm a junior and young commander here. I want younger officers in my unit who have social media and technology experience, obviously. You want to keep up with organized crime groups. This is what you need to do. That's what they use, and that's what they're good at. And we need to be equally as good or better in order to combat organized crime.
Any further questions for Inspector Hall? We'll now turn things over to Sergeant Vieira if you want to have a closer look at the display and ask any questions at that point.
And can you just limit your questions to Sergeant Vieira about the technical aspect of what you see on the table? That's okay?
Any questions?
Yeah, sorry. Just get the saved here, I think.
As well, after the press conference, you may certainly step up and have a closer view as well, take some more photos.
Sergeant Vieira, how do you spell your name?
B-I, you want me to remove the mouse?
If you don't.
If you don't mind, could you beat the mic just for the cool view so everyone can hear?
Yeah, so Vieira, V-I-E-I-R-A.
And what's your first name, Sergeant?
Mark, M-A-R-K.
And are you Guns and Gangs or?
That's correct, yeah, Sergeant of the Guns and Gangs Unit.
I mean, tell us about what we see in front of us here.
Yeah, so I'll start on this side of the table here. So this is the large amount of meth that was seized based on this investigation. As you can see by the contaminated fentanyl stickers, this is the fentanyl that we seized. Get a closer look, color duration here. We have a large amount of counterfeit Xanax pills located in the middle here. Right beside that, we have a large couple of containers filled with cocaine and a small portion of crack cocaine. To the side of that, we also do have some psilocybin, which is mushrooms. And then, of course, the large amount of money on the side as well.
As for the weapons, I mean,
Yeah. So we have the 22 rifles on that side. It's going to be the GSG and a Ruger. See a magazine and also the smoke grenades. All of the air pistols are located in the middle. 3 are a resemblance of a Glock. This is the actual 6 Sauer 40 caliber handgun and the 22 caliber Derringer prohibited weapon there. Small gun, as you can see on the table. We have a shotgun here and then the Ruger rifle.
Any further questions for Sergeant Vieira? Okay, with no further questions, thank you very much, and this concludes our press conference today.